This is not just a courtroom story, this is the story of a girl who refused to disappear in a country that often tells the powerless to stay quiet. This is the story of a daughter, a sister, a survivor who walked into a courtroom carrying nothing but truth and walked out, carrying the weight of a nation's attention. Her name is Ava Thompson. She is 24 years old, and until 1 year ago, she was invisible to the world, just another small-town girl from Ohio, working 2 jobs, helping her single mother pay medical bills, dreaming about law school, believing in hard work, believing in fairness, believing that in America, if you did the right thing, the system would protect you, but systems are not always built to protect girls like her, and that is where this story begins. Late one night, after finishing her shift at a downtown restaurant, Ava stayed back because her supervisor, a respected local businessman, offered to discuss a promotion. He had influence, connections, political ties, the kind of man who donated to campaigns and posed for photographs at charity galas, the kind of man people described as pillar of the community. And that night, behind an office door, with the music in the restaurant turned low, and the staff dismissed early, the mask fell off. What happened next shattered not only Ava's sense of safety, but her belief in power structures. She froze. She pleaded, she said no, and when she finally left that building, her world was no longer the same. She reported it the next morning. She went to the police, shaking but determined. She endured invasive questions, skeptical looks, whispers that suggested misunderstanding, exaggeration, regret. She watched as the man she accused hired one of the most expensive defense attorneys in the state. She watched as rumors about her character surfaced online, old photos, reposted comments, dissected strangers deciding who she was, without ever meeting her. But she did not withdraw. She did not recant. She did not disappear. The case moved to trial, and suddenly her private trauma became public record. The courtroom filled every day. Reporters lined the steps. Activists gathered outside, some holding signs supporting her, others claiming false accusation. The prosecution built the case around consent, around power imbalance, around forensic timelines, and security footage showing her leaving visibly distressed. The defense attacked credibility. They highlighted inconsistencies, natural human memory fractures, under trauma, but presented as deception. They suggested ambition, revenge, financial motive. They questioned why she returned a work text message days later, ignoring the reality that victims often act normal to survive social pressure. They dissected her clothing, her tone, her delay of minutes before filing the report, as if courage must follow a stopwatch. And through it all, Ava sat there, hands steady, eyes forward, refusing to let them reduce her to stereotype. She testified for 6 hours. Her voice did not break when she described the office, the smell of cologne, the sound of the locked door, the weight of disbelief that followed. She looked directly at the jury and said, "I am not here because it is easy. I am here because silence protects the wrong person." And that sentence rippled beyond those walls. Experts later called her composure extraordinaire, but composure does not equal absence of pain. Every night she returned home to her mother, who blamed herself for raising a daughter who trusted too easily. Every morning she walked past cameras that framed her as headline, not human being. The defense presented character witnesses, business partners, church members, community leaders, all describing the accused as generous, incapable, honorable. They painted him as target of cultural momentum. They used phrases like due process and presumption of innocence, reminding everyone that accusation is not conviction. And they were right about one thing: the burden of proof is sacred in American courts, but so is accountability. And that tension electrified the proceedings. Closing arguments became verbal storms. The prosecutor spoke about power, about how influence can create environments where no becomes negotiable, she reminded jurors that consent requires clarity, not confusion, and that fear can silence even the strongest voices, the defense argued. About doubt, about career destruction based on memory gaps, about the danger of convicting without absolute certainty, and then came deliberation days, stretched media commentary, intensified social platforms exploded with divided opinion, some calling Ava hero, others labeling her opportunist strangers, debated her facial expressions as if trauma must follow script, and when the jury finally returned, the courtroom air felt heavier than gravity. The verdict guilty on counts of sexual assault. The sound was not loud, but its impact echoed nationwide. Ava did not smile. She did not celebrate, she exhaled slowly, as if releasing a year of suffocation. Outside supporters cried critics. Questioned appeals were promised, and the story could have ended there. But it did not, because the real impact unfolded afterward. Women from different states began sharing their own experiences, citing Ava's courage as catalyst. Organizations reported spikes in reporting, corporate boards reviewed policies, conversations shifted from rumor to reform. Ava enrolled in community college part-time, studying criminal justice, saying she wanted to sit at counsel table one day, not as victim but as advocate. She faced backlash, threats, accusations of destroying a family, but she also received letters from survivors thanking her for standing when it was easier to fold, and in interviews she said something that divided audiences, yet sparked discussion. She said, "I did not win my peace back in that courtroom. I won my voice, and sometimes voice is the first step toward peace." Critics argued the system worked as designed. Supporters argued it rarely works. This clearly commentators debated whether cultural tides influenced justice, but beyond politics, beyond commentary, beyond trending hashtags, there remained a simple, undeniable truth. A young woman refused to be erased, and in doing so, forced a community to confront uncomfortable realities about power, credibility, and courage. This is not a story about perfection. Because trials are messy, memory is imperfect, and justice systems are human constructions, this is a story about resilience under cross-examination, about dignity under scrutiny, about what it costs to stand alone when standing alone invites global judgment. And as months pass, appeals proceed, and headlines fade, Ava continues forward, not defined solely by what happened to her, but strengthened by what she chose. Afterward, she speaks at universities, urging institutions to prioritize safety. She reminds audiences that believing survivors does not mean abandoning evidence, it means creating space where truth can surface without intimidation. She emphasizes that due process and compassion are not enemies. They are pillars that must stand together if justice is to mean anything. And perhaps that is why this story resonates, because it challenges extremes. It asks viewers to hold complexity, to acknowledge both the gravity of accusation and the devastation of assault. It refuses simple villain caricatures, while still affirming responsibility, and in a nation constantly debating rights, freedom, fairness, this courtroom became more than legal arena. It became mirror reflecting cultural tension, and through that reflection, one young woman's steadiness shifted conversation, proving that courage is not loud bravado, but sustained refusal to surrender identity under pressure. And as she walks across campus today, books in hand, future unwritten, she carries scars, yes, but also strength forged in testimony. She knows comments will continue, opinions will clash, strangers will speculate, but she also knows something deeper, that truth spoken publicly cannot be unspoken, and that once fear is confronted, it loses some of its command. So when people ask whether the trial changed America, the answer is complicated. Laws evolve slowly, minds shift gradually, but stories move hearts instantly, and this story moved millions. Not because it was sensational, but because it was human, because somewhere in that courtroom, viewers saw a sister, a daughter, a friend, and imagined the courage required to endure scrutiny for the sake of principle, and whether one agreed with every argument or questioned every detail. The emotional weight was undeniable. This was about more than verdict, it was about voice, and voice once amplified, creates echo, and echoes reshape rooms, and in that Ohio courtroom, beneath fluorescent lights and national attention, a young woman stood alone, and by standing alone she ensured countless others no longer have to.